Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt McArthur. I am running for Congress in the Texas 13th District. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm making some of these videos because while I'm going to forums and talking to people, I thought that it would be better to make some videos where I could go into depth on certain issues. Instead of having to can an entire policy into a 30-second answer or something to that effect, I wanted to make some videos where I could talk for 4 or 5 minutes and really go into the details and let people know what I'm thinking and what I mean when I say I want to do something. Now, today I'd like to talk to you about some of my proposals for policy changes as they have to do with infrastructure. Now, the U.S., for those of you who are unaware, does not get high grades for its infrastructure. And by that I mean roads, bridges, highways, that sort of thing. And if you come to some districts like District 13, which is very rural, it's 40,000 square miles and quite a distance between towns with more than 5,000 people in them, what you're going to find is the counties don't have enough money to fix and maintain a solid road system. Now, a lot of people would ask me, well, why is it my job if I live in Wichita Falls or Amarillo to fix a road system over by Hereford or up near Pampa? And the reason for it is you still have truck traffic going through, you still have travelers going through. And because the road systems in some of these rural counties are so lengthy, the type of taxes they would get, property taxes, gas taxes, that sort of thing, are not covering the amount of traffic that they have going through. Now, the U.S. has a lot of money put into the highway fund. They have a lot of infrastructure grants they give out. Most of that money goes to urban areas with populations over 1 million, things like that. Well, all the trucks that drive to New York City, Chicago, LA, full of all the neat things that go in their Whole Foods down at the corner, most of those came from rural counties and rural states, like District 13. If you don't believe me, then take a look at all the wheat you see outside of Amarillo and realize most of it, when it gets turned into bread, is probably going somewhere other than Amarillo. And what that means is the trucks carrying the food supplies and everything else from these rural areas are going to cities. The cities are getting the infrastructure dollars, the rural counties aren't. Those trucks, even going from New York and LA or San Francisco and Miami, are passing through rural districts like District 13. Amarillo is something of a hub city. Lubbock, which is outside the district to the south, is also a hub city, though part of this district surrounds much of Lubbock. So all that truck traffic going through these hub cities are going through these small districts. And these counties are not getting the backup they need to keep their farm to markets or county roads paved. We're also bringing in a lot of windmill traffic. And if you drive through the Panhandle or parts of West Texas out here, at night you're going to see red lights all over. Those are windmills. Go through in the daytime, you're going to see them one after the other after the other. It looks like a whole forest of windmills out there in some places. Now, those windmills are very large. I mean, they require oversized loads, heavy loads to go in, to be hauled in. They have to be built with heavy equipment. It takes a very large crane to put 100 and some foot windmill up. Now, with that in mind, our road systems in these small counties are getting torn up. So while a lot of people in Washington are willing to subsidize an energy company, electric company who's putting up windmills because it's green energy, they also need to subsidize the small counties who have to maintain the roadway so that those things work. And I want to see a lot of infrastructure grants come back to the rural areas for that. Now, part of this district encompasses towns like Amarillo, Wichita Falls, Gainesville, cities that are growing. And in some ways, their population is outgrowing their ability to build roads and bridges and drainage and all manner of other things in order to keep up. Now, I've worked in every major metro in Texas. When I was in my teen years or early 20s, it wasn't a big deal to drive through San Antonio or Houston or Dallas. I mean, you get traffic at rush hour, but it wasn't bad. Now, there's not a whole lot. I mean, San Antonio to San Marcos, New Braunfels, all that. Austin, there were definitive differences between the towns. Now it's one long city stretch, it seems like. And we've hit a point in traffic in many of these districts. I was in Gainesville last week, and the traffic at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening was actually pretty thick. And it was because they're running out of room to widen roads within town. The county's population in these counties is expanding rapidly as our metroplex expands. Now, Texas is getting a lot of new residents, many from places like California or New York or the old Rust Belt. And it's because we don't have a state income tax. We've got a more business-friendly environment, and that's good. Our economy is exploding. The problem is, though, as this population comes in, if you're going to build a subdivision, you need to build drainage for it. You need to build electrical infrastructure, plumbing, that sort of thing. And right now, these counties aren't able to do it because they have to build the stuff prior to getting tax money in from it. Now, Texas pays out more money. I believe it's $1.07 for every dollar they get back from the federal government. Now, part of what they assume is coming back to Texas is actually money spent on the military at bases in Texas. And while those do have an economic impact, I don't know that buying some new M1 Abrams to put at Fort Hood is really boosting the economy of Texas. I mean, we're happy to have them, don't get me wrong, it's not like it's going into the local grocery store. As a result, we're really paying in $1.30, $1.40 for every dollar we're getting back in federal money. And right now, Texas has several big metros. One of them, the Dallas-Fort Worth one, is growing due north. And these metros are expanding rapidly. And as the Dallas-Fort Worth metro expands north, it's expanding into cities like Bowie, Decatur, Gainesville, areas like that whose road systems can't keep up. We're also seeing a spillover effect in towns like Wichita Falls. And I was through Wichita Falls recently, and their counties are having a hard time keeping up the road construction. And those are just the urban areas. That's not all the rural areas in between that also need it. And I think the federal money, which has recently been localized primarily to the Pacific and the Atlantic coasts, needs to be divvied out more fairly. And one of the things I'm going to fight for, if you guys elect me to Congress, is to bring some of that road and bridge money back to Texas. If we're going to tell a county with a population of 2,500 people that we need to put up 200 windmills and we need to make sure that they're running and we're going to subsidize the companies that own it, we also need to let the county know that we're going to put some money their direction to make sure the roads that are required to service these things are fixed. There's no sense having people living in the county and driving on torn up roads and busting up their vehicles when the federal government's the one who said they needed to go there. I think the federal government needs to make that right. The federal government also needs to emphasize our road and bridge dollars to places that are growing. If Texas is paying in a bunch of money in federal taxes, and we are, we're going to need some of that back to make sure that the gravy train keeps flowing, because at some point in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Amarillo, they're going to start running out of places to put people because they can't keep up the infrastructure. If something's booming, you don't make it stop. It's just good business. I also, and one of the senators from North Carolina is also spearheading this at the Senate level, I want to work with that gentleman on broadband. Now, I consider, at this point, for the United States, internet to be a type of infrastructure that has to be looked into. Now, I'm in Spur, Texas, where I'm from. My grandmother actually founded the library back in, I believe it was 88 or 89. And one of the things she did, even though as they were putting it into 90, 91, internet was a thing that most people didn't really know about. It just, was just starting to come up. She had grown up in a time period when Spur first got electricity and Spur first got running water, and understood the necessity of putting in a big enough pipe or a big enough electrical line. See, when she first moved to Spur and they first brought in electricity, they didn't put in a very big line to run the electricity in because nobody thought they'd use it. I mean, they hadn't for years. Why would they start now, right? Well, all of a sudden, they watched somebody down the street turn on a porch light and be able to cook with an electric stove. Then everybody needed electricity, and they had to go back, tear down all the poles, put in bigger ones to have the right infrastructure. She understood that the same thing was likely to happen with internet. So they made sure they were bringing in the infrastructure to where they would have adequate internet here. And so I get a little spoiled when I drive around the district, and I don't have high-speed internet anywhere I go. It's just weird to me. But I realize internet is where people are starting to go for jobs. It allows people to telecommute. They have people running entirely online businesses. It also allows for things like doctors to telecommute. You can set up clinics where a nurse practitioner can see people and prescribe medication, but at the same time, a doctor in a hospital in, say, Amarillo or Lubbock or Dallas somewhere can then look at the charts real time and make recommendations, and they can basically FaceTime with the patient and not have to put a doctor in a small town like Spur one day a week and somewhere else. And that allows the people in these small towns to have better medical care. Same with education. I don't think it takes a whole lot of imagination to see what a school could do with broadband. I mean, at that point, they can share teachers. They can telecommute teachers in. Broadband is going to be an infrastructural need that rural communities are going to have to rely on in the future. And I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, they live in a rural community, they don't need access to the same technology. They do. Their kids need good, solid educations. Their kids need access to the same technology that kids in cities do. And I think broadband is something that should be put in all the rural areas, and I will work with the Senate to make absolutely sure that broadband comes into every rural county in the state of Texas, especially District 13. I also want to see grants go towards things like local libraries. To an extent, certain things like swimming pools or something along those lines, if you can prove an economic impact, but definitely parks. You see, your small towns make most of their money off sales or property tax. So the more valuable their property, more taxes they get. So to help make things sustainable in small towns, you need things that they have that will bring in people or boost property values. Now, public parks have been proven to do that. Libraries have been proven to do that. Roadways have been proven to do that. In addition to genuinely improving the quality of life in those places, it also is economically viable because it keeps those economies rolling. And I know having lived in a small town most of my life, I know the importance of something like a community pool or a nice city park where the kids can go play. Again, when we were in Gainesville the other day, walking around with my niece, and they had a beautiful playground set. It looked like a big wooden castle. And then I have to come back through some of the rural counties where they're doing good to set up a $1,000 playground set for the kids. I don't think the kids in rural counties deserve less. I think they deserve just as much. And I think these cities would be able to prosper better if we helped them out with certain infrastructural grants, things like parks or schools or pools or roadways to make sure that they can stay modern, and definitely broadband, as well as libraries and other things of that nature. Because after all, we want an educated populace, and sometimes that means we have to put money into areas where the populace is lagging behind financially. Our farms and our ranchers, our food is produced in these rural counties. If we want to continue to have that, an efficient source of it, we're going to have to support them as well. Now, for those of y'all who aren't familiar with all of District 13, it runs from I-35 north of Dallas all the way to the west, cuts up above Lubbock a little bit, hits the Panhandle over near Hereford, on the New Mexico border, goes up the Oklahoma border and hooks back around. It is 40,000 square miles. There are a couple of populous areas of Wichita Falls, Gainesville, and Amarillo, but most of it is very rural. You're talking cotton farms, wheat, windmills are run pretty big, a lot of cattle ranches. Those industries are the backbone of the United States of America. What sets us aside above anybody is our ability to produce food. We're the best in the world at it. That's why you have to try pretty hard in the U.S. to go hungry. We need to support that. We need to support the people who are the backbone of that economy. If elected, I will work hard to make sure that infrastructure dollars are going back in the districts that are still paying taxes but not getting them back. Not everything needs to go to the East Coast or the West Coast. We here in flyover country deserve a fair shake too, and I'm going to fight for it. Anyway, my name is Matt McArthur. I appreciate you watching this. Please check me out here on YouTube at Matt McArthur for Congress, on Facebook at Matt McArthur for Texas District 13, or check out my website, mattmacarthurforcongress.com. I'd appreciate your consideration in the Republican primary. Thank you.